You probably would agree, we all came to architecture school to do creative designs, not to work on Excel spreadsheets. Build software that is for architects by architects to make us better day to day and improve our workflows. Make sure that it does not disrupt the current workflow. Make sure that it needs to be versatile and flexible.
Hello, Architect Nation, and welcome back. Ryan Willard here, Principal Partner at Business of Architecture. On today's episode, you'll discover how smart firms are halving their production time without hiring. Now, do you ever feel like your firm is reinventing the wheel on every single project, wasting precious hours searching for that one detail you know you've drawn before? Or have you ever wondered if AI could actually finally solve the productivity nightmare and free your team to focus on real design? Or questioned how some firms are cutting production time in half without hiring more staff? Well, on today's episode, you will discover the hidden gold mine sitting in your server right now and how to make it draw for you, why your firm's best design assistant might already be in the building but not on the payroll, or how one architect turned tedious construction docs into a 20x ROI using artificial intelligence. Today, we're talking with Natalia Bakaeva, the co-founder of ARKI, a company that's changing how architecture and technology work together. She's leading the way in using AI to make project data more useful and easier to access. With a background in traditional design, Natalia is now focused on building tools that help architects work smarter and shape the future of the profession.
Today's episode is sponsored by Vectorworks. Why settle for switching between multiple design programs to complete a single project? With Vectorworks Architect, you don't have to. Simplify your workflow with a hybrid 2D and 3D modeling environment made to support your work, from the pre-design phase all the way through construction documentation in a single platform. Learn more about the tool that can help you accomplish everything you need with the free 7-day trial of Vectorworks Architect. Get started here at vectorworks.net/business of architecture.
This episode is packed with insights that could change the way you think about your firm's future. So let's dive in.
Natalia, welcome back to the Business of Architecture. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me again.
Absolute pleasure. I was very excited to have you back on the show after the last podcast conversation we had where you came and told us all about ARKI, and we were just talking about AI innovations in architecture. And I thought it was such an interesting kind of proposition that you were doing, this kind of knowledge base for architects, and having a piece of software that has the capacity to be able to actually generate design ideas using AI, visually being able to represent things. And I've spoken about the idea to so many people who have all been equally as excited at the kind of capabilities of something like this. So yeah, really excited to have you back on the show and to talk about what's happened since in the last 12 months or so since we last spoke. But perhaps we could start from the beginning, just for people who haven't heard the first podcast, and we could talk a little bit about your role, and how did you come to found ARKI, and what is it?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you so much. And I'm glad to hear that there's a lot of interest from people that you've been chatting to. So I have background in architecture. I'm a registered architect here in Ontario. I also hold a certificate of practice, and I've been practicing here in Canada for the past decade and 20 years in architecture overall. And I've always been super interested in tech and how we can be more productive, better architects using technology that we have in hand instead of, um, fighting technology. How can we leverage it so we can actually be more productive, more creative, and sometimes not repeat the work that we've done or reduce the tedious work, grunt work that we don't like to do because as you probably would agree, we all came to architecture school to do creative designs, not to work on Excel spreadsheets. At least that's how we were
I'm
sold.
sure there's a couple people listening to this podcast who did do it for that, but they're the minority for sure.
And sometimes, I enjoy an Excel spreadsheet myself, but that's definitely not why I came to architecture. So all of that led me to today. We founded ARKI 2 years ago. I partner up with software engineers to address an issue of redundant repetitive work in architecture, where we believe that now, with the technology that we have available for us today, we can build software that is for architects by architects to make us better day to day and improve our workflows. So, I've been working on the thesis for a long time, even before I started this company. When I was, intermediate architect at the firm, I was always working very closely with BIM managers, the digital technology team, and always trying to find a way how we can improve. So essentially, I took that out of the architectural office and had to be outside of architectural office to actually, improve the processes that we face today.
Amazing. And so it's quite a leap to kind of step off the structured path of being an architect to basically being a tech startup founder. What did that jump look like? Was it easy? Was it that you kind of recognized that there were these redundant, repetitive workflows that existed everywhere in architecture? Um, and what did that kind of leap look like for you?
Yeah, great question. So I think that for me, it's been brewing for a long time.
Hmm.
Throughout the years in my career, the leap was not just one step; it was a gradual transition. So initially, I switched from typical architecture office to working for a property tech startup, where essentially I learned things about startups and how to speak with software engineers, how to deliver products. From there, I went actually into teaching,
Right.
and I learned a lot of communication techniques there as well. Presentation, how to speak with an audience, how to be able to communicate things that maybe not as straightforward, and but you need to still deliver them. And from there, we actually went through startup incubator. That's how I met my co-founder, our CTO Mehdi. And Mehdi brings best practices from the software world, where he's not an architect. So he doesn't think like an architect. So he would challenge how we do things. And the same time, he's inspired by the way we work, the way architects work. And he wants to make sure that the best software practices that exist in the industry are actually brought to our profession as well, which, as you know, sometimes not the case, because the software has been built, either by fully outsiders for us, for our industry, or by architects, but without maybe um, the holistic view of the software development best practices that we need so much. So we try to combine both and bring it to Arki.
So when we're looking at this idea of eliminating redundant, repetitive workflows, what are we talking about? What sorts of things spring to mind, and how does ARKI do this?
Actually, great question, and I'm gonna speak to the previous episode that we've done, um, because some of the things that we talked about at the episode, like reinventing the wheel, redundant work, we have about 30 firms reach out to us right after the episode, and they told me that they have the same conversation word by word, like we had on the podcast. They would quote both of us on the podcast, put it in the email, and tell me it is absolutely insane how close what you guys were saying on the podcast is to what we are saying inside the office every day. So that's how, we have all these firms, and we qualified three of them. And then we essentially had them join our program. And this was just the stream from the podcast. We had
Wow.
other firms coming from the conferences and, just my network.
Mhm.
So we had about six firms who essentially built the software with us, and they were coming from different countries actually, which is very exciting. So in terms of the tedious tasks, so I think the main thesis is, if we are a team of 20, 30, 60 people, there is a very high chance that we are working on the same details or in the same plans or same specifications, but the parts of work could be similar or the same. We run in the projects in parallel, which means that not always we have time to discuss every single piece of information we are working on simply because we're on a deadline. That's not something that is very common to be discussing, right? There is no way for you to know all the scope of information that your colleagues are working on. And then what ends up happening once the project is completed, the filing is done by putting this information on the server or on cloud, which is more rare. We see only about 5% of the firms that are working with the cloud solutions, mostly just on premises. And once the project is completed, we don't typically look at that knowledge after ever again. And there is a lot of times when there is a desire to revisit this information, but there is no means to access it. With ARKI, we started with a very simple statement. How can we leverage the past work so we can draw faster in the future? And we started with construction details because it's a universal language and because we know that whether you're a structural engineer, architect, interior designer, sometimes even landscape architect, urban planner, you can still be leveraging and reusing this data. It's a very common problem, and it's a very unified piece of information that you can leverage. But we didn't stop there. We actually went from construction details only. We went into design blocks, we went into sections, plan views. So now there's more comprehensive data that our customers can actually file and then bring further in to their future projects. To give you an example, if I'm working on a hospitality project, right, and I'm in the early design development and I need to lay out, simple locker room
Mhm.
or maybe a lobby or a security desk, and I don't really have time to go and fully lay it out or sketch it yet. Like I'm still very early. Now ARKI will allow you to bring those design blocks, schematically place them on a plan, and you will be able to use your own data. So no one needs to go on Google and search for this information outside. They can do it all internally without over modeling, over detailing at the early stages. So you see how it started from a very simple idea of like typical details, accessibility details. But by working with those architects, by working with those firms, it actually went to a whole new level where now we are reusing and actually revisiting way more data than we initially anticipated.
Mhm. So this would be producing like generative design ideas based on past historic database of that firm's drawn information.
Great question. So today, at the stage we are at, we are collecting the data. So for the firm to first get set up on ARKI, they need to upload the information they already have, right? So it is a journey of going from data to information to wisdom. So today we're in a data ingestion mode. So you upload your data, it becomes part of ARKI. Then next layer would be information. We bring the data, we create collections out of it, we categorize the data based on application, let's say window
Mhm.
sill, I don't know, window details, door details. We have it by project, we have it by category, by client. It's up to them to decide how they want to categorize their own data. And the second step is information. We can add notes, we can share, we can collaborate on the data. And the wisdom is the next step that you're talking about. That's what we are working towards too. How can we not only file and have what we designed, but how can we actually draw and generate based on that data? So this is still a process. This is a journey.
Mhm.
So we always have to remind the firms that it doesn't happen overnight. We currently don't have generative AI tools that are available for firms at the enterprise level yet, but we are slowly getting there. But it's a process. It's not gonna happen in one step.
The I mean, I love the kind of the future of this being a kind of generative drawing tool. Is this something that the big players like your Autodesk and Bentley and ArchiCAD and all these other sorts of companies, are they spending time doing this same kind of research themselves, or is this something that you can see like ARKI being a plugin to those kinds of bits of software? And then you would have like a scenario where, um, you've got a kind of outline survey of a car park or a site or whatever it is. And then the software is then able to kind of go in, hunt, come up with an idea, and then it sort of spits it out, and then you've got a new CAD drawing. Is that the sort of the vision for it? And what's the relationship with actual current bits of drawing software?
Yeah. So we today already integrate with Revit.
Right.
So it's already happening, exists, and we also support PDF, AutoCAD, so different types of
Mhm.
files. And in the future, I think we want to be software agnostic. So we are not tying to any one specific ecosystem. We are basically going after the data and after the information that architects, engineers want to preserve and have this for the future, reuse this knowledge. And in terms of the generative AI, I think the way we are talking about generative AI here is slightly different. I think the part that is generative for us is how we connect these pieces of information.
Right.
We don't see ARKI as a floor plan tool or some sort of rendering tool, and that's not something that we are interested in building. It's more about how can we create the architectural mind map of information, and how can we deliver value that is directly tied into the business outcomes. And I think Autodesk is interested in that, from what I know. And when I say business outcomes, is focusing on profitability, focusing on the bottom line for architects, and how can we make a correlation between the data and what they draw, who draws it,
Mhm.
how long it takes, and how can we decide which project for us is the most profitable to take based on everything we done in the past. And that's a generative AI component that we are talking about here.
Ah, okay. So it's taking more than just actually producing like generative drawings, but it's actually distilling kind of key information about the projects, its profitability, how successful it was, the how long it took, all that sort of stuff, as well as drawing information. That's
That's our goal. Yeah.
wow. Okay,
Yeah.
that's really deep. That's really interesting. So what are some of the kind of challenges here? Because I'm still, I'm still trying to get my mind around it, and I'm just equating it to my own very limited knowledge of like usage of ChatGPT or Grok, where okay, I understand that those language systems are being trained on some kind of textual information or visual imagery, and then you're asking it something, and it's kind of retrieving. What what is happening with training an AI to understand architectural information? What are the kind of unique challenges that drawing information has, and what sorts of project information is actually very useful for to be able to extrapolate trends and be able to predict things like this?
Yeah. So that's, first of all of this is pure innovation. So we are learning as we go. And a lot of this techniques and ways to work with the data, they are being discovered as we go. So every day there's new information, and we take a pride in actually being this cutting edge team and always researching for the better tools and better solutions for our customers. In terms of the data, it's a very complex issue. First of all, as we learned, I knew about that problem before, but we dug deeper since we started working with many firms across the board, that every architecture firm does it slightly differently. We have slightly different way to put a fee proposal together. We have slightly different way to put a Revit template together and all the things that come with it. This is one challenge that we are currently facing. In terms of the data, so if I put it in simple terms, is we have information about the projects that we have been completed, and those projects could be either executed projects, meaning that we put the fee proposal together, we signed the contract, and we drawn the project and delivered it to the contractor, to client, and to the stakeholders. And the second type of the project would be proposal that we put together, but it didn't go to actual project contract and execution. But the data still exists, right? Sometimes here in North America for public projects, the documents would be in hundreds of pages. And, the most valuable, the most expensive hourly rate firm stakeholders, they would be spending tens and tens of hours on those proposals. And then we just take this, put it aside, and never look at it again. So that's the first step for us. We want to take the executed proposals, which are projects, and not executed proposals, which are just the documents, and then create a database of all the projects the firm ever done in the past. The second step would be typologies. What are the typologies that are, the most common? And trying to overlay those typologies with the team members that we have. Who are the team that is most skillful in, let's say, healthcare projects? Which team has shorthand communication working on this project typology? And the last step would be when we put in the proposal together, we are able to actually know ahead of time how much data or how many things we already have in our database that we can be looking at and reusing. So let's say we want to charge less because of the competition. I don't know why we would charge less, but sometimes I hear architects do that. At least if I'm deciding to reduce my fee for one reason or the other, I'm not just doing it for the sake of competition or chase to the bottom. I'm doing this because I have a hard data to prove that I can actually execute this project with less resources, with the team that is available right now. They can work really well together. And I actually have half of the details that I need to draw already, and I can prove it on ARKI that they exist, and the software will actually make a suggestion. These are the details that you can reuse, and these are the details that you will need to tweak, and these are the details that you don't have at all. And kind of looping back to where I started this answer, as everyone does it slightly differently. So for us to find this common ground, we need to go to fee guidelines, to checklists of the project delivery guidelines by stage, and tap on this information. But this is the biggest challenge that we experienced so far.
Wow. Okay. So it's like it's proposal information, fee information. The ARKI is kind of looking to position itself as being able to generate these sorts of proposals fairly rapidly. And also just give the business owners a very detailed understanding of what would be involved in a particular project, and also be able to highlight the risks and the kind of divergence from the last plan when it all went, on how they executed it. That's enormously a powerful set of tools to be able to do that. With the early adoption firms that you mentioned earlier, can you walk us through how it's gone with them, and what does it look like, or what has it looked like with your relationship with them, and exactly what you've been doing, and how how does that kind of relationship unfold?
Yeah, great question. So we had about 30 firms, as I already said, reach out to us right after the podcast
Mhm.
being released. And then after that, we had about 20 firms reaching reaching to us over the span of this year, and I actually have still firms reaching out every now and then, saying that they saw the podcast or kind of somehow that came into their attention. This episode that we did with you a year ago. With this interest, we brought three firms on board, and then two of them actually became our customers, and they've been working with us for about a year now.
Mhm.
And the third firm did not become a customer because of their own tech stack, so they kind of decided to first upgrade their own infrastructure and then move ahead with ARK in the future if there's interest at that time. And the experience so far been great. So what we do, we actually deliver the statistics of usage to our customers, and they can see who in their team is using the software. And the results are actually pretty incredible because the customers that have been with us for months, they using the platform every day, which is even for us, that's like the most optimistic predictions. That's what we want to happen, but we didn't expect this to happen in the first months since they used the software. And the experience been amazing. So what we've done is essentially we sign up them as partners, and we would meet with them every 2 weeks, and we would ask them questions about their challenges, and we would go over kind of trying to dig deeper, trying to understand a little bit more, not only the surface level conversation, because this is not that wouldn't be helpful. And then from there we would go back to drawing board and digest this information, and we would go back in 2 weeks and then tell them what we discovered, what we learned. And this gradual process led us to essentially releasing ARKI in September 2024, and now it's accessible to general public. So anyone who is on coming to us, they are able to see the demo and to become a customer because the software is now completed and built. And I think now with the next step about around the profitability, what I just mentioned, we are aiming to do kind of like a similar process. Use the trust that we have with our existing customers, with those who've been with us for a while, who know that we can deliver the software, and maybe some new firms who are willing to join us at this stage, and essentially have another kind of iterative journey of building this very integrated, holistic software for our profession. So that's essentially what we are working on right now. So the experience has been great. And actually, you know what? I have some stats to share with you because
Please.
I know you like numbers. So they told us that in terms of the time savings, so in the first couple of months, they were able to see 15 to 30% of time being reduced, so up to a third. And once they fully set up on ARKI, meaning the team is trained and everyone kind of accustomed to using it, they see the about 50% efficiency gain. So let's say if they're working on a set of construction details or any sort of type of information that ARKI can cover today, they can save up to half of their time. And another example that we hear from another customer is that, let's say, if they're used to working in residential typology, and then all of a sudden they put on the industrial typology where they're not familiar with it, and they got allocated around 3 days on the execution of that scope. With ARKI, they were able to create a cartoon set of industrial details, even not being familiar with that typology, in less than a day. So almost again 3 times saving in terms of time.
Wow. So the current capabilities of ARKI, how would you just describe it in the version that you can actually get right now that's online? What does it allow a practice to be able to do?
Yeah, great question, because we kind of go between the vision and what we have today, and I understand where the question is coming from. So today, it's very simple. You have your archive projects that's been already completed, or maybe your detail library. Maybe there's a template library. That sometimes firms divide their detail libraries per category, accessibility, waterproofing. So all of this data goes up on ARKI. It goes up on ARKI very painlessly and very fast and very simple by pressing just one button. They have an option of selecting what they want to bring to ARKI or just uploading all the data. And essentially, our Revit plugin helps you to find those assets that are eligible to be uploaded. So you don't really need to do any work here. Once you upload this information, it arrives on ARKI, and then from there you can search and reuse. So without tagging the data, without providing any sort of additional information, because we're using AI, it is able to recognize information visually, meaning what is actually drawn on the detail. If there's a grab bar and the grab bar is not being tagged, our machine learning system will still able to find that information. We also look at the notes, we look at the metadata, name of view. So you're able to search either with a precision search, meaning specifically what you're looking for if you know the name of the unit of information, or conversational AI search. An example would be give me a kitchen counter detail in residential typology, and you will be able to retrieve this data and bring it back to Revit, reuse
Oh
it,
my God,
rinse and
I mean
repeat.
that's amazing in just in itself. The amount of times I'm just thinking of you're mucking around in the office and then more introverted personalities don't want to ask or disturb somebody, or you ask somebody, they tell you about this project, and then all of a sudden you got distracted and you're looking through blah blah blah. That's
Yeah.
that's amazing. So
How many times have I heard when a person tells me, I know for a fact we've done this detail before,
I
but
don't
I
know
have
where it is.
no idea
Yeah.
where to find it.
Yeah, I mean that's really amazing. Is it only kind of digital information, or have you been able to? Have you worked with some of these practices and they've gone through their old archives of printed out information, or is that information typically historically kind of voided? And are do you see or do companies want to share databases?
So I'm gonna answer two parts. First of all, the archive data and the rolls of drawings in those back of house storage rooms. Um, they are definitely still on minds of architects, and we still get this question saying, "Will we be ever able to go and scan those and bring them to ARKI?" That's something on our roadmap, and we're actually thinking about it. And I'm even thinking about it how physically execute that. But this is not for today. We have to start with the low hanging fruit, which is digital data, just because there's so much of it
Yeah.
that even for us to go through the digital data that's already available, it is thousands of units of information. Just to give you an idea, we are now at around 30,000 units of information, and we are working with 20 firms, and they're only getting started to upload their data. So we have this big data problem from day one. Some other startups have it on day 10 or day 20. We had it on day one. So, and we don't limit them how much data they can upload. They can go crazy and upload all their projects they wish to. And we provide the security measures, and we understand that the data is their bread and butter, so we are very serious about the security. And the second part of the question, you asked me about
But before that, just in terms of the like old archive drawings, it's quite interesting. Like I wonder if there's a point in time where actually the majority of printed drawings anyway are just obsolete for an architecture practice. They just naturally become obsolete, and everything that's of any use is digital anyway. And it kind of it's I go into so many architecture practices and see these crazy rooms that have got drawings sometimes from the 60s if it's like an old practice.
Yeah.
Part of me, and that there's either it's some sort of nostalgia from the business owner that's holding on to
Yeah.
them, or there's some sort of historic value, and the other part of me is like, maybe it's just obsolete information, and doesn't have as much value. We've managed to exist without looking at these drawings for 40 years.
Yeah.
So there's
I think I think majority was is nostalgia. I was about just to say that
Mhm.
actually. And I think there's maybe 10 to 5 to 10% actual knowledge because I do see architects sometimes pull those drawings and show to junior staff how some of the things have been done. Because if you know that you probably aware of that the drawing standards changed a lot
Sure.
with the software coming in, how we used to detail a wall section then versus now. There's definitely an educational component there,
Mhm.
but I think you're right. It's a fraction of a percent, and if we didn't use it all this time and somehow we're still able to execute our work, that means that we probably don't need it day to day. But I think architects see it as a first of all, matter of pride. They want to preserve that knowledge. And if there is a way for us to also tap into this knowledge, maybe it's not on the level of just drawing a wall section. Maybe it's on a different type of level. Maybe we want to see the way the classrooms were laid out, or maybe the way the units were laid out, or maybe the way the kitchenettes or security desks or lobbies were laid out back then and now. Maybe it's for comparison, maybe for reference. It's up for them to decide on that. In terms of sharing of the data, a very interesting question because we are currently working on that component. So we decided to start by bringing manufacturing data and partnering up with the suppliers of the robust systems that have technical information available online. And essentially, the goal here is that when you start on ARKI, it's not a blank canvas, but it already has some data that you can browse through and kind of see the capabilities of the software before you uploaded your data. And starting with manufacturing information and going to the code assets and some of the other common elements that we know that every firm needs. And this is very applicable for smaller firms
Mhm.
because sometimes there's a bit of a lack of you know libraries, or maybe the firm just has started a couple of years ago. They don't have that much information yet, and for them this is extremely important to actually kind of have the starting point and almost help them to kind of
Oh, that's
get up and running
so
faster.
that's very interesting. So are you collaborating with kind of manufacturers of products and then essentially it's them kind of almost advertising really. You're charging them a fee and they upload their CAD information and then it's there available immediately for a firm to kind of pull out as a resource.
Because the thing is that, Ryan, going back to our profitability
Mhm.
conversation, I want to be able to suggest to architectural firms some of the applications that they might need or might be applicable for the specific project in the typology, in its maybe geography as well. And even this manufacturing data can act as part of those suggestions. They not necessarily need to use that specific product, but maybe it can be a placeholder before they draw an actual detail. And I know that a lot of people will criticize that and will say, okay, we don't need all these placeholders. But I think for us to as a starting point, for us to be able to see the scope of this project is extremely helpful. So we do it more for this reason rather than trying to, sell manufacturer information
Mhm.
and kind of push it on the architects. It's more for, information purposes because we hear there's another problem that a lot of times time spent on just searching for those Revit files, CAD files online. And typically it's done by junior staff who has less experience. And if they don't have the luxury of having, summer students or available interns or more junior staff, then the intermediate architects end up spending this valuable time just browsing on internet and searching for those assets. We want them to be Revit ready.
Mhm.
We want them to be available to be downloaded right away in the right format without going through the journey again of downloading, seeing what version, opening up. Maybe it needs to be cleaned up, exploited. We will do it for them. That's our goal. And the second piece to it is the sharing of the data between the
Mhm.
firms. And this is the mechanism that currently already exists on ARKI. If the firm is working on, let's say, joint venture, And there's a collection of assets that they want to build, and they are ready to share with each other because it's up for them. If they need to execute this work and they're willing to share this collection, both of those firms will get access from their ARKI account to that collection, and they will be able to take data from there.
Great. So that's interesting. So it's a kind of willingness. You've both got to sign up to be able to share with a specific other person, as opposed to kind of having your information as a like an open source kind of repository of information.
I think we're still many steps away from the open source because I think there's still there's a bit of anxiety around the open source treatment of architectural data. I think that smaller firms are more willing to go open source just because they need that knowledge. They don't have the luxury of institutional knowledge. And the larger firms, they're more protective because they feel like they have a lot to show for it, and they not necessarily interested in sharing because they know that they have enough internally. So it's like finding this balance between making sure that the small firms feel like they have enough value, and the large firms, they feel like, they're still able to learn from the open source environment, right? So that's the balance that we are still trying to work out and find.
What about kind of the earlier? So we've kind of talked here about details, and obviously that's the kind of easiest thing because they're the clearest, cleanest drawings. Typically, there's often a lot of written information on them. There's probably less ambiguity with construction drawings than there are even with a planning set, for example. But what about right at the early stage, kind of conceptual drawings, freehand sketches, and the sort of volumes and volumes of, sketched ideas and sketchbooks that architects often like to keep? Has there been, with the clients that you've been working with so far, has there been any kind of conversation about like how does the freehand drawing aspect get integrated into this? Is there value in making a similar sort of archive with freehand drawings? What's that kind of conversation looking like?
We did have those conversations, and essentially the way we see ARKI is a comprehensive software where you will be able to filter by asset types, right? So today our asset types are details, design blocks, sections, and like section details, plan details, right? In the future, we want to be able to add sketches, renderings, massing, and maybe infographics, those elements that we see being repeated, and they are, you know they're essential for your work, because at the end of the day, we're not doing it just for the sake of creating, a pretty catalog, or just filing all the data that we've done. It's more to do with what is the job to be done, what are we trying to accomplish. And let's say if I'm a firm that does a lot of multi-unit residential work, and I want to file the floor plate layout. Two elevator cores, we have 10 units if it's a tower here in North America typically. I want to file the floor plate diagram configuration. I will do it because I know that the person who will be working on similar project after me can actually benefit. And if he or she or that person sees that 10 configurations of those tower layouts, they actually can draw faster in the future by just looking at the diagram. So I think that's the philosophy that we are adopting here, and that's basically how we work. So everything that we do has to be backed up by a use case, a business case, and how day to day this actually can benefit them and their work.
So at the moment, the kind of the let's call it that the first generation of ARKI is very much in the world of the visual drawn information, and then with the extension of in the kind of near future, graphics, infographics, diagrams, and that sort of stuff. And then beyond that, are we looking at is beyond that then we start looking at project proposal information and financial data, or is that something that's much sooner?
Financial data will come sooner.
Yeah.
Because I think that we see a lot of challenge around it,
Hmm.
and we as as a tech builders who are delivering value, we can't just ignore this issue, because I think we started with the idea of the drawing reusability and efficiency, productivity, but the more time we see that the fees come up, profitability come up, the bottom line, and we need to make sure that we're addressing this as well. And we're addressing it through data, we're addressing it through actionable insights. And we almost build a network of this predictive analytics that the firms can use to their own benefit. And I think, Ryan, going back to the conversation about the sketches and bringing them on ARKI and filing them, the way I see it in the future to be developed is essentially want to build the second brain for each architectural
Hmm.
firm. So with all this data insight that we've gained over the years, whichever output we're looking for, we will be able to pre-draw based on our own internal data. And that's a final goal. So it's not so much about what data that is, it's more to do with what are we trying to accomplish and have we done this before, and can we actually leverage those resources. And I think that's something that on a very high level really inspires me, and that's what I strive for. How can we have this machine that is has our own intellectual property, is not shared with anyone. It stays inside of this office. And by asking it a question or giving it some sort of prompt, how can we leverage all the data that we have to be more productive and pre-draw this information for us?
Amazing. I'm going to change tact a little bit here. And one of my observations, and I'm, here at BOA, we're very kind of excited by the potential of AI in architecture firms, just, from the usage of it in ChatGPT to generative images to what you're doing at ARKI. I just think it's, there's so much potential here to free up and unleash architecture businesses. And, you can imagine like a team of 2 to 3 people doing an enormous amount of stuff and being able to be architects and not really, just caught up in the business. But one thing I have started to um, kind of hear from the industry itself is a concern over sustainability. I don't know if you've heard this, if you've come across this as well, but obviously, there are kind of statistics that talk about, a chat GPT search using half a liter of water. There's sustainability concerns around data centers and data storage. And we've got this, everything that we're doing, we've kind of gone through this process in the architecture industry of wanting to become a fully digitized offices, as that was the next green thing to be doing. And now there's a kind of ecological footprint that's interwoven with digital usage. So, ChatGPT, generative kind of computational power being very water and energy intensive, massive data storage. We can look at cryptocurrency transactions and all those other sorts of things, and just file storage in general is enormous. Have you met or heard or come across that kind of concern that many architects have who have got a kind of very strong commitment to sustainability? And if you have, how do you navigate that? What's your own stance and take and thoughts about it?
Yeah, so that's not something that comes up kind of day to day
Hmm.
right now, because I think that the users, the architects, just wrapping their head around what's going on and how the systems are working. And that in my presentations that I talk about AI and architecture and like the tools that are available to us, I talk about this as well as we are in a stage right now where we're trying to just get a general understanding how the industry will look like
Hmm.
in few years and next couple of decades, right? And I think that for Arki, we have the statement on sustainability, and I think first of all, the hope is that the practices will get better. Those machines will get more efficient, and because there is a lot of investments coming into this research and AI innovation, um, we are optimistic that the the waste will be reduced, and there is actually going to be a desire to be more efficient on their end as well, because that's how they make money. And the second part for us is the sustainability of design practices, something that I'm leaning very heavy into, and we have a whole statement about it. Is essentially, how can we as architects be more sustainable if we are able to reduce the number of hours we spend on execution of construction documents, because we are very careful how we preserve this data and how can we monetize this data second time. Now we have available resources to run our practice more sustainably. Maybe we take a half a Friday off, or maybe we take the entire Friday off, or maybe we reallocate these resources and we actually invest the money that are now freed up into another sustainability initiative that's happening outside of our
Mhm.
office. And by leaving the office early, we actually do save energy and we do save power. And this power is both um, grid power
Mhm.
and our staff and the people that are working for us. So that's the statement that we've been working on, and kind of like that's kind of how I lead with. And so this is a kind of reallocation of resources, and I guess finding the sustainability where previously it does not, unfortunately, exist today.
No, it's an interesting topic, and I know obviously, many of architects that I converse with. That's one of their sort of part. It's a very deep part of their mission, and I echo your sentiments of that. I believe that AI's ability to solve really large infrastructure problems and sustainability problems kind of means that the net benefit of the usage of AI is from as an ecological perspective, it will be very positive and very optimistic. And we see these kinds of amazing sort of developments of like neuromorphic computing and just the kind of just in the hardware of data storage centers and things like that. There's the world's best minds working on it because there's a real business case as well of making sure that it's that it's energy efficient. Otherwise, it just becomes unsustainable for companies to be able to use, really take maximum usage of that kind of enormous computing power. Amazing! I'm so excited for what you guys are doing. Um, I know last time we ended the conversation with a kind of call to action for practices that perhaps wanted to get involved. Is there a similar sort of call that we could invite some of the listeners here into?
Yeah, for sure. So I think very important for me to mention is that our listeners, I know that they're coming from different, backgrounds and maybe different positions in their firms, and I know that for someone who is a day-to-day user of the software architect, they would like to be more creative. They would like to do less tedious work. They would like to feel empowered by their firm, because I've been in situations where the firm would be 6 years old and they would invite me and they would promise me that they have all the standards figured out and established. But as long as I need to draw something, unfortunately, that was not the case. And I only learned it the hard way on the job. So we want to avoid that as much as possible, and make sure that we are able to empower those users day to day. And for someone like a chief of technology, or those stakeholders that decide what software to purchase, or how this all ties into the workflows, we see that it's very important for them to make sure that it does not disrupt the current workflow, make sure that it actually integrates with day-to-day processes that already exist. So even if we bring in something new, it needs to create the minimum disruption to what they currently have as a system. So it needs to be versatile and flexible. And at the end of the day, we see from the CTOs and technology officers out there that they would prefer software agnostic pieces of integration, and at the same time they would want to see, you know, one tool solving multiple problems, which is very hard to achieve. And that's something that we've been kind of trying to build here as well. And ultimately, for principals and partners, it's all about, the bottom line. How do we make our firm more profitable, and how do we, empower our staff to be happy and at the same time to be productive. And we currently have a cost benefit analysis of ARKI, which is about 20x ROI. So it returns 20x in the first year.
Pretty good.
So it's
Pretty good.
yeah. And actually, we just recently updated the website, and all the case studies are out there. So if the listeners are interested, they can go and check it out. And I think that with all that said, whichever stakeholder that you feel that you are and type of user, we are very interested in hearing from you, and not only showing you what we already done, but to also hear what else you feel like day to day is a struggle for you. We are very lean team, and we move very fast. And very often, when we hear from our users, and if we truly believe that this is something that is an impediment or something that we're capable of building with the, energy and resources that we have today, we will just do it and build it for them and deliver, sometimes in a matter of days or weeks. So we are currently working on the data and the drawings reusability to be more creative, to reduce the redundant work. But everything that I told you about the firm's profitability, about the fees, about the predictive analytics on what projects we should take on, if that's something that interests you, please reach out, and we can start this conversation, and maybe you can build with us.
Love it. Amazing. So if anyone wants to reach out, best way for that is just to reach out to you via email, and we'll put the relevant information into the podcast information.
So yeah, so our website is getarki.com. Pretty straightforward. There's a link there where you can sign up, and you will reach out to our team directly, and you will be dealing with me, and you can ask all the questions you have, and we're pretty responsive. So we only one message away.
Amazing. Brilliant. Natalia, thank you so much for joining me on the show again, and I look forward to the next one.
Thank you so much, friend. Appreciate it.
Now, here's today's smart practice tool tip. Guess what? Most architecture firms are collecting just 60 to 70% of what they could be earning on every project. You're doing the work, bearing the stress, carrying the liability, but possibly leaving $250,000 or more on the table annually without even knowing it. The Smart Practice Revenue Capacity Planner is your 30-minute financial reality check that shows exactly how much money your firm could and should be making right now. Get this Smart Practice tool 100% free as a podcast listener by going to businessofarchitecture.com/capacity. And thank you to our recent listeners who left reviews on the podcast iTunes. Your reviews help others find this podcast, so this rising tide raises all boats. To be acknowledged on this show, open up the podcast app on your iPhone, search for Business of Architecture, and after clicking on the show, scroll all the way to the bottom and leave a review.
Today's episode is sponsored by Vectorworks. Why settle for switching between multiple design programs to complete a single project? With Vectorworks Architect, you don't have to. Simplify your workflow with a hybrid 2D and 3D modeling environment made to support your work, from the pre-design phase all the way through construction documentation in a single platform. Learn more about the tool that can help you accomplish everything you need with the free 7-day trial of Vectorworks Architect. Get started here at vectorworks.net/business of architecture.
Today's episode of the Business of Architecture show is sponsored by Smart Practice TM. the world's leading step-by-step solution for small architectural practice business owners that want to structure their existing practice so the complexity of business doesn't get in the way of the architecture. Because you see, it likely isn't your architecture skills that hold you back. It's the business aspects of running a practice, managing projects and people, dealing with clients, contractors, and money. So, if you're ready to quit being a glorified administrator and get back to architecture again, go to smartpracticemethod.com to discover the proven, simple, and easy to implement smart practice method that is revolutionizing firm management for owners and teams. Hey, Ryan Willard here, and I want to thank you for joining us today and remind you that the views expressed on this show by our guests do not represent those of the host, and we make no representation, promise, guarantee, pledge, or warranty, contract, bond, or commitment except to help you conquer the world. Carpe diem.